And he said, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say the person's, a false god's name because of Exodus, in Exodus where it says that you shouldn't mention false gods. And so let's read that passage real quick. That's just a general overview of kind of what he said. He says, pay attention. This is Exodus 23:13. It says, pay attention to all that I have said to you, and make no mention of the names of other gods, nor let it be heard on your lips. And then now I pulled up a couple of other passages here. I wonder if should we actually show these? Give us just a second here, folks. Let's do this. Let me switch here to accordance. And sorry. What we'll do is we'll bring up Exodus 23:13. Exodus 23:13, and let's see what we get here. Okay, let's bring these up. All right, sorry, we're doing this all on the fly here.
That's all right.
So it looks like Exodus 23:13 here is at the top, and then Joshua 23:8. This is the reason that I cross-reference this. First of all, the first thing I'd have to say is that in Exodus 23:13, the idea of not having God's name on your lips, what does this actually mean? If we're not actually allowed to utter a name of a false god, then then we can't read the Bible out loud, right? There's false gods throughout the Bible, so you wouldn't be able to read that out loud. Joshua 23:8 says, "But you are to cling to the Lord your God as you have done to." Let's see here. What did I do wrong? Did I get the wrong 23:8? Okay, let's read the next one. The Lord our God, O Lord our God, other masters besides you have ruled us, but through you alone we confess your name. And I think this is probably a better idea of what's actually going on in Exodus, right? The idea that we can't ever say the name of another god, I'm sorry, I don't agree. My father says this. I pulled this from his commentary or his notes on Exodus. His note on Exodus 23:13 says, which prohibits, he says, Exodus 23:13, which prohibits evoking the names of pagan gods, may seem intrusive. And this is because of where it is in the actual text. If you look, it kind of seems out of place. Like it's not really, it seems like that. My father goes on, but actually, it fits perfectly into the flow of this passage. The pagan world of the ancient Near East knew many festivals, most of which centered around an invocation of the gods to renew the soil and to invigorate the flocks in order to be fertile. Now, as soon as this verse...
calling upon them.
Calling
upon them.
As soon as this verse is done, we go straight into all the high holy days in Exodus 23, right? These were accompanied by magical rites aimed at propitiating divine powers and enlisting their aid in bringing produce and offspring in the coming year. Thus, we should understand the prohibition of not mentioning the name of pagan gods or letting them be heard from your mouth to be connected with such pagan rituals, which apparently were attractive to Israel throughout her history. This is further emphasized in the next verse, 23:14, by the command to celebrate the feast of Israel to me. That is, to God exclusively. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, this came up the other day on a completely different trajectory. Reading through 2 Samuel 11 and 12 with a friend of mine in Hebrew. And if you remember 2 Samuel 11, this is David and Bathsheba, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in this, if you remember the story, this is where Uriah is like upright in every way, and David's like trying to get him drunk, get him down with his wife. That doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to send him to his death. Well, if you remember, just to kind of, there's a lot to it here, but basically David writes a letter to Joab, who's leading the army on the battle, saying, hey, take Uriah, put him up, where you're going to get killed, and then everybody else basically run away, and then Uriah will be dead. And then he gives that note to Uriah to take to Joab himself. So Uriah is carrying his own cross, basically. He's carrying his own death sentence. which is a great theme in the Bible. But aside from that, after the battle, Joab sends a messenger back to King David, and he says, David's gonna. He preps the messenger. Says David's gonna wonder, how come you did this? What is this? And he says, remember the story of Jerubbaal, of Jerubboshet, about how he went under the wall and the lady threw the millstone and it killed him, or it almost killed him. Okay, well, the story of Abimelech, son of Jerubboshet. That's what Joab calls him. But if you go back. So that's in 2 Samuel 11. But if you go back to the book of Judges, where the story's told, it's Jerubbaal. Jerubbaal is a name for Gideon, Jerubbaal. And his son is Abimelech. So it's Abimelech in Judges 9:1, for example. It says his name's Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal. But in Joab's letter to David, he calls him Abimelech, son of Jerubboshet. And the question is why did he change?
Why did he change his name? Yeah.
Well, and I think it's because Boshet is one of the words for shame, and David maybe didn't, or Joab didn't want to write the name Baal or something, so he changed it to Boshet. I don't know. That's a speculation, but he does change the name, and of course, the story is one of shame because this Abimelech guy, he had killed his brothers, and God, it was God's justice that killed him. Mm-hmm. Which, long story short, is a code that Joab is sending to David, saying, David, look, you're not going to escape the justice of God any more than Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal or Jerubbaal did. So the reason I want to mention this is because this could be interpreted as a time in Tanakh itself where a person who knew the name Baal but they wanted to change it. They wanted to write something different. And but even then, even if we grant that that's what's happening, we're still not sure if it was on an ideological idea that Joab was saying, well, no, I can't write Baal, or if he was actually kind of satirizing the story from Judges to make the point to David.
Yeah.
So,
I pulled a couple of quotes from rabbis too about this specific passage. Ibn Ezra says, "Make no mention of the names of other gods. Do not swear by them. They should not be heard by your lips. Do not tell an idolater, swear to me by your God." As Joshua 23:7 says, "Do not utter the names of their gods or cause others to swear by them." So Nachmanides takes a little bit different twist on this. I found this really interesting because, it speaks for himself. They should not be heard on your lips. Even if you do not call them gods, you must not mention Milcom or Ashima at all. So he writes it out. So how's somebody supposed to read this out loud? You're not supposed to mention them at all. Here, I'm going to write them down for you so that you can say them. Instead, he goes on, instead, you must call them by some insulting name, such as the abomination of Moab, 1 Kings 11:7, or the detestable things of the Ammonites, 2 Kings 23:13. Or it might mean, so now he has a different interpretation, a possible different interpretation. He says, or it might mean, you may not say anything that causes one of their worshipers to pronounce their names. As our sages have said, one may not go into partnership with an idolater and have him swear by his idol. But make no mention might be used transitively to mean that one may not mention them to their worshipers, to say, for example, by your God, do me a favor. So I think the point here is somewhat clear, though, that it's not that we're not allowed to ever speak the name of a false god, because if that were the case, we wouldn't be able to read the Torah. Rather, it means, it shouldn't be on your lips. In other words, you shouldn't swear by them. You shouldn't give them any reverence.